Here's what I'm going to talk about this time. So a little bit of introduction about me and what I do. How does your immune system actually work and what does it do? And what are some causes of low functioning immune system or things that can affect your immune system to stop it working as well as it should? Look at some why or when infections are a little bit more prevalent. We've got a whole bunch of research and some studies that are relevant to some of the things that I'm talking about. How do we go about testing your immune system? How do we know whether it's actually working well or not? What can you do to find that out? And obviously some natural preventions and treatments to help support your immune system and make it work better. And then, as I say, we'll have some Q&A at the end. So a little bit about me. So I'm a clinical nutritionist, naturopath, and herbalist as well. I do work here in the clinic upstairs. Oh, hello. On Wednesdays and Saturdays, and the other days of the week I work online and I see people all over the country or internationally as well. So it's a slight little bonus out of the COVID restrictions that business is booming really. So people from all over the country are particularly in some of the lockdown states. The number of people in Victoria I've had over the last 18 months is pretty incredible. They can't get out and go anywhere, see anybody, so let's just do it online, so it works just as well. I've got a particular interest in specialising in really complex, difficult, complex and chronic cases or combinations of different symptoms and conditions. I've developed a protocol that sort of helps me identify all of the root causes of people's health issues and conditions. So some of those are listed there, so inflammatory conditions, hormonal, autoimmune, even cancer and a lot of mental health. So they all have an element of immune system dysfunction involved with them. So the information that's here is really relevant to a lot of these complex chronic conditions as well. My philosophy and how I work is perhaps a little bit different to other naturopaths and etc. I do tend to follow the holistic model, look at the whole, all of the aspects of someone's health, not just their physical or what's going on. I listen to my initial consultations are very detailed, they're 90 minutes long, which is a lot more than you get from your GP. So I can find out a lot more what's going on with your health. Take a very detailed case history of really all aspects of your health, your main issues of concern, your diet, stresses, lifestyle, digestion and many other things as well. So I can get a really good picture of things that are working, things that are not working, and how it's all fitting together. My aim in my detailed questioning and a lot of my information is to try and find the root causes. And I believe only by finding those root causes and then treating them or fixing them can we start to turn around all these conditions and symptoms that we have. And you may understand this is not a medical approach, which is typically you take this pill, and all the pills or the medications do is just suppress the symptom and make it feel like you don't actually have a problem. So you've got a headache, you take a Panadol, yeah, it clears the headache. It doesn't fix the cause of the problem. That's the problem. And so if you stop taking any medications, then of course all the symptoms are going to keep coming back because you haven't fixed anything. And that's not how I work. It's not what I want to do. I actually fix people and get them well again. So we need to find all of the root causes and all of the symptoms as well, and treat all those root causes. And treating the person as an individual and not treating the symptom or treating the condition. Again, that's a very medical model approach. So we have two people with diabetes, for example. Their individual causes of diabetes will be very different. Their symptom presentation will be very different. So you can't treat just the diabetes or the symptom according to some protocol. You have to treat the person as an individual, and that's what I do. And then, of course, treating people using natural and evidence-based treatments. As a naturopath and nutritionist, we're very evidence-based in what we do, and it guides my recommendations and my advice. If you can't read that, don't worry, we'll be here all day to read this. So basically just the information on the slides just to say, or a reminder that the things that I'm going to talk about in this session are just some general information for you. It's not specific health advice for you. Everyone's circumstances and symptoms and conditions and issues are going to be different. So some of the things I may talk about here may not be relevant to you and may not even be appropriate for you. So it's just some general information. That's all. So it's best to work with your individual health practitioner. Okay, let's get into it. So we're first going to talk about how your immune system actually works. Okay, the immune system comprises several parts. Number one, your innate immune system, the adaptive immune system, and your microbiome. So we'll talk about each of those in a little bit more detail. So your innate immune system is actually your first line of defence against any pathogens, infections, and viruses, etc. It's generally non-specific. It just simply knows that if your immune system comes across a pathogen in your body or on your body, that it knows that, well, this is actually not me, this is something else, I need to attack it and get rid of it. It doesn't care what it is. It's usually the innate immune system is responding to something you've never seen before, like COVID. It generally acts very quickly. It just, as I say, it knows that something is not you, so it will attack it and launch an immune response against it. And typically includes your skin as a physical barrier against infection. The mucous membranes, which are really right through your body, so you probably see this as like your respiratory tract, for example. There's also your digestive tract, your urinary tract, reproductive tract, whatever. All of these internal areas generally have a mucous membrane, skin lining, usually some sort of mucous barrier, and that's part of our immune defense. And we have very specialized cells in the skin, in the mucous membrane layer, that are part of the innate immune system, including natural killer cells and other proteins and enzymes in there to help with the immune system fight against whatever the attack may be. So your innate immune system, perhaps if you sort of imagine a young child or a baby just being born. So babies will have to a degree an element of an immune system that actually works. It's something that develops and grows and improves over time. But they're not, newborn baby's not going to be like us. We've had years and decades of being exposed to bacteria, viruses and things, and a newborn baby hasn't. So it's going to be their innate immune system that's going to be on alert and responding very quickly and rapidly to any and all infections, viruses, bacteria, etc. that it's going to be exposed to from day one until we pass on. So I guess what I'm saying is that do we really need a third-party man-made product that's not mentioning any names that's actually going to make your immune system work? No. That's what we've got our immune system for. If we didn't have our innate immune system, we would have died out millions of years ago. Okay, that's what I was trying to get to. All right, next part, the adaptive immune system. Perhaps as the name suggests, it adapts and learns. It's our second line of defense. This is our long-term or our permanent immune system. It's very specific, whereas the innate immune system is very non-specific. So it's a very targeted response against a particular bacteria or a particular virus or a particular strain or variant. It generally can take over from the innate immune system, or the innate immune system can actually trigger the adaptive immune system to take over in infections. Or it also automatically responds to and quickly to an infection on a subsequent infection. So the first time you're exposed to COVID, for example, your innate immune system is going to be responding and triggering an immune response against it because it's something that it's never seen before. On subsequent exposures to the COVID virus, then it's going to be your adaptive immune system that's going to be attacking it. Because at that stage, your adaptive immune system would have been handed over an element of the immune system response and developing antibodies to it on the first exposure. And then on the subsequent exposures, then it's going to be your adaptive immune system that's going to go and fight that infection. So the adaptive immune system is going to include our antibodies that are developed after the first exposure, our memory cells, T lymphocytes and B lymphocytes as well. A little bit of a picture of what an antibody looks like, sort of a Y-shaped structure there. And our microbiome is a massive, vast collection of symbiotic or commensal bacteria, yeasts, and other products. We typically would imagine our microbiome as being in our digestive tract, but it's not just there. There's trillions of bacteria in our digestive tract, but we've also got probably the same on our skin, in all of our body's tracts as well, our mucous membrane tracts, and even internally right through the body, different tissues and organs in the body have generally their own microbiome. And for the most part, they're working for us or with us to actually help improve our health. But sometimes we can get an imbalance of perhaps some more bad bacteria versus good ones, and we call this process or this situation dysbiosis, or an imbalance in the microbiome. So again, our microbiome, just through sheer weight of numbers, will drown out a lot of the pathogenic bacteria or viruses or yeasts that may be trying to get into the body. Our microbiome actually regulates the production of a lot of our immune system cells and our immune proteins. So about 70 to 80% of our immune system is basically driven by or regulated by our microbiome. It has a huge impact on our health. Okay, so some causes of low immune system function. So what's really contributing to this? Actually, just before I get into that, I just want to talk about what are some of the prerequisites for actually having an infection. Because we're exposed to bacteria and viruses and all sorts of other microbes 24/7, every second of the day. So because there's so many of them, that doesn't mean we're going to catch everything that we may be exposed to. So what are the prerequisites for actually coming down with an infection? Well, number one, generally exposure to some infectious agent, for example, virus. And we typically come down with an infection for something that perhaps we haven't seen before, something that we haven't developed antibodies for from a previous exposure, or T cells, memory cells, which because some people actually don't develop antibodies, whether it's from a vaccine or from an infection. Some people just don't. It's a big mystery of the whole immune system. Why someone can actually not get an infection when they don't have any antibodies? So there's a lot more to the immune system that perhaps we don't really know. So it's not just about antibodies. So as if you were exposed to something, then your immune system would be able to respond to it. So when you come down with something, it's usually something new that you've never seen before, that your immune system hasn't seen before. You also need to have a depleted or compromised or poor functioning immune system. Because typically, again, because you're exposed to billions of bacteria and viruses every day, that doesn't mean you're going to get billions of infections every day. You're only going to come down with something when your immune system is not working as well as it should to protect you. So these are some of the things that can cause that. Stress. Stress basically triggers a lot of biochemical, physiological changes in the body. And our bodies respond in particular ways. We often call this the stress response, the flight or fight response, I'm sure you've heard, which prioritises a lot of different body functions, prioritising things that are needed for immediate survival. And your immune system is not one of those. So your immune system, when you're stressed, is typically depleted, not working very well. Your emotional issues, moods and attitudes, so sort of energetic maybe, whether you're negative, pessimistic, angry sort of person, because your immune system is not responding in a particularly good way, or perhaps you're happier, more positive, then of because your immune system will respond accordingly. Poor diets, having poor food choices, perhaps excesses of some foods or deficiencies of others, is going to affect your immune system. Low water intake, might sound like a bit of a weird one, but your mucous membranes are generally moist. They're supposed to, mucus is supposed to be a little bit damp or wet. It's part of the immune response to sort of trap pathogens in there, but it stops them actually getting through the mucus and actually into the body cells to infect the body. So if you're dehydrated, not drinking enough water, of course your mucous membranes are going to perhaps dry out. You're going to let some of the bacterial pathogens actually through the mucous membrane and into the cells. So keep drinking sufficient water. Lifestyle choices, smoking, drinking, drugs, not surprisingly, will have an effect on your immune system. Exposure to toxins and chemicals in your food, your water, in your work, lifestyle. And medications. So actually many medications actually deliberately reduce your immune system function. So not least of which some of these there, non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, even Panadols and paracetamols, corticosteroids, they're all specifically to reduce your immune system function. Antibiotics also have the same effect because they're actually killing off a lot of our microbiome, which is supposed to actually protect you and regulate your immune system. So it's a stupid concept that when you're ill, and even worse, when you've got a virus or COVID or a cold or a flu, that a doctor would say, oh, here's some antibiotics. It's going to kill your immune system when you actually need it the most. It's a stupid idea. Poor quality sleep, or not getting enough quantity sleep. At night, your body needs to repair, replace damaged cells and tissues, and build up our immune system. So not getting enough sleep is going to have an impact on that. Other effects on your immune system, seasonal and geographic factors. It might sound a bit weird, but trust me, we'll go through that shortly. Other infections, so if your body's dealing with one particular infection, then it's not necessarily going to be working very well to deal with another one. And this can happen quite a lot. If you're dealing with one immune response, then you can actually increase your risks of getting another. Other immune dysfunction, autoimmune conditions, obviously have an impact on your immune system. Having a caesarean birth, or being born by a caesarean, I should say, not so much a problem for us adults, but usually for much smaller children. So when the children are born normally, they come through through vaginal birth, they are exposed to a lot of the vaginal microbiome, which gets in their nose, it gets in their mouth, and this can actually start to seed their microbiome in these tracts and actually help start off their immune system. So a baby that's born caesarean is not going to get that exposure, and there are a lot of studies showing that babies that are born caesarean will generally develop a lot of what we call atopic type conditions, so eczema, asthma, these types of issues when they're younger. A lot of times they'll grow out of it, providing of course their diet and everything else is good as well. Low thyroid function can affect your immune system. So your thyroid is a gland in your throat. It produces hormones that control your whole body's metabolic rate and metabolic function. And basically the function of every cell of the body. So if the thyroid is low functioning, and it's quite a common situation, then of course your immune system's not going to work as well as it should as well. So we need to address that. There's many others, but these are probably the most common effects to the immune system. So I'm not sure if you've sort of noticed that there are times when infections are more prevalent. Generally in winter. Is this something that anyone's sort of noticed, or a few nods, most of you? Yeah, not really surprising. So it's going to make it a little bit interactive. So what do you think is actually causing that? And you're not allowed to answer it, Elaine. Or you can know. So what are some of the things that you think actually affect the reasons why you get more colds and flu in winter, for example?
side.
So sunny
Sunny
side. Yeah, you're on the right track, but why?
It's cold.
Well, it's colder, okay. We're getting warmer.
Yeah,
So,
with vitamin D.
sorry?
Vitamin D.
Perfect. So it's all about sunshine and sun exposure. So the reason why in summer, like now, it's nice and warm, we're getting outside in the sun, we're getting good sun time, our body makes vitamin D from direct sun exposure on our skin. In winter, it doesn't happen. We're all wrapped up like this. You're not getting any sun exposure. We're staying indoors, as you were saying, because it's too cold to go out. And so generally we are supposed to, in the warmer months, to build up our vitamin D levels to a sufficiently high sort of level, and then that keeps us going through. It should keep us going through winter. Sure, your vitamin D levels are going to drop a little bit over winter, but if your vitamin D levels are very low to start with in the warmer months, you're covering up, you're wearing sunscreen, and you're doing all those stupid sun-safe things. Sorry, don't say that out loud. Then of course you're not going to develop your vitamin D levels, and when you get to the colder months, it's already really low, and it's going to increase the risk of colds and flu and COVID. So vitamin D is obviously affected by sun exposure. Also, it's going to affect our moods, cause more inflammation, and because vitamin D is such a massive immune system booster, it's going to affect your immune system as well. So I'm going to look at a range of different studies just to confirm some of these thoughts, and probably throw a few in there you've never seen before. So this is a really cool graph from a study that's looking at the prevalence of respiratory infections, as we can see from the upper axis on the left. It's looking at the rates of respiratory infections across the different seasons, but also looking at the levels of vitamin D in people as well. So we can see the colours down the bottom, the lowest vitamin D levels in red, the highest vitamin D levels are around 100 mark, which is actually the minimum where you should get to, just to say that. In green. So let's have a look in the winter graph. So there's the highest rates of respiratory infections in winter, and then within winter, of course, we can see as well the lower your vitamin D levels are, the higher the risk of respiratory infections. Let's have a look at the opposite. So summer has the lowest rates of respiratory infections, and similarly, the better your vitamin D levels are, the lower your risk. But even in summer, even if people with the lowest vitamin D levels are still somewhat protected, although it's good to be better. Okay. Another really interesting aspect of vitamin D and your immune system is simply where you actually live on the planet, where the particular latitude of where you actually live. This is really unusual, but it's very cool. So if we take, for example, the graph on the top left, so it's a city in the middle of the US, and it's looking at the rates of, again, flu infections, and in what times of the year. We can see all of their flu infections, or their highest flu and respiratory infections, start in December, January, February, and tend to drop off. Obviously, in the northern hemisphere, that's their winter. And then there's nothing through the warmer months. None at all. Well, conversely, let's have a look at Sydney on the bottom right. So it's a similar position on the latitude, but the opposite side of the equator. And we can see all the rates of flu infection are in the colder months again, and next to nothing at any other time. So they correlate the northern hemisphere to the southern in opposite seasons. And then the other two cities in the charts there are basically on the equator. They typically don't have summer and winter. It's warm all year round. They generally have perhaps a dry season versus a wet one. But generally the same with similar amounts of vitamin D through the year. And as we can see there, the rates of respiratory infections are a lot less. So the vertical axis is quite a bit smaller compared to the US or even Sydney, and they generally have a much more stable or even rate of infections through the year. So it's really interesting the latitude of where you're actually living on the planet actually affects your immune system. This is another really cool study. So we actually looked at the amount of time people in Australia needed to spend in the sun in summer versus winter. And so you can see the details there. So it's outside the hours of 10 a.m. to 2 p.m, so not in the hottest part of the day. And we can see, let's start with Brisbane, so 6 to 7 minutes just to maintain good vitamin D levels. It's not supposed to, these figures are not trying to get your low vitamin D levels up to like 100s or no. This is just to maintain and certainly stop it reducing. 6 to 7 minutes in summer. It doesn't sound like very much. That's every day. So if you miss a day, you've got to make that up. And that's generally just shorts and t-shirt, for example. But if we have a look at winter, so what happens in winter? Obviously, the planet tilts, and where you are in summer it becomes the opposite tilt, and we're further away from the sun. It's colder, and there's less sunlight, and the angle of the light coming in is greater as well. So it generally means less production of vitamin D, even with the same amount of sun exposure. So in Brisbane, we need 3 times that sun exposure on our skin to make the same amount of vitamin D as in summer. It's not something that we usually know about. So even in winter, up to 19 minutes a day in shorts and t-shirt is possibly doable in some days in Brisbane. But let's have a look at Melbourne. So only really 1 minute difference in summer in Melbourne. But look at the details in Melbourne in winter. 32 to 52 minutes every day to maintain your vitamin D levels. That's not going to happen. Up to an hour a day in Melbourne, outside of 10 to 2 p.m, no chance. So this is a problem why I believe people in the southern states are suffering so badly from flu infections in previous years, but also COVID at the moment, and through winter. It's just simply because they're not getting enough vitamin D in summer, and then they're coming to winter, and they're just not getting enough time, so their levels are just dropping, and their immune system stops working or reduces its function, and of course then they're susceptible to any infection that they're exposed to. So a really cool study. And this is really small, I will zoom in on it, but just to explain. So this is some research that I actually did looking at some official statistics of the rates of COVID in Australia and the COVID deaths as well, so the official stats. Looking at the seasonal aspect as well. So I'm looking at each of the four charts in detail. So what I'm showing on here is I've got the green lines showing the summer months, and the red vertical lines are the winter months. I've also drawn in horizontal red lines and green lines in there showing the minimum, maximum, or the range of cases in those particular seasons. And we can see there was actually no cases in summer last year. It didn't start till in Australia till late February anyway, and even then it didn't really cause anything until a little bit later. But we can see that the range in both winter last year and winter this year, the range was quite high. There was next to no cases in summer last year, summer last year. But yeah, 2 weeks or so into winter, bang, the numbers just start going through the roof. Okay, so this is the slightly different view. Again, the green boxes showing the summer period, and the red boxes showing the winter months. And so this is the daily cases of each day in those periods. So we can see again, nothing in summer last year, nothing in summer this year, maybe just a handful of cases as you can see. But as soon, 2 weeks into winter, bang, the numbers just shot through the roof. So this is the actual the death rates, again, seasonally. 2 to 3 weeks into winter, bang, the numbers just exploded. There's no cases of any deaths in summer last year, and then there was one in the whole of Australia in summer earlier this year. And so there's a huge difference between winter and summer there. These are the daily deaths, and as you can see, there's one tiny little speck in the summer in earlier this year, nothing there the previous year. But then as soon as winter hit, bang, we started having a lot of problems. So, does this look like a pandemic to you? It's not, it's seasonal. It's a seasonal infection, same as a cold, same as a flu. It's not a pandemic. So in Queensland, as of today, there's only been 2,188 cases. That's it. 7 deaths, as sad as that is, that's, across 2 years, that's nothing. There's no pandemic. It's seasonal, it's just another seasonal infection. And the risks really come down to your immune system, how well your immune system's functioning, to actually deal with this infection the same as any other. And the COVID vaccines will not fix the cause of the problem, which is your immune system. If anything, they make your immune system worse. There's a lot of studies on that. They don't fix the cause of the problem. Has anybody seen any information from any health professional, medical or health department on how to look after your immune system and support your immune system since this started? No, nothing. And I was really angry about it because early 2020, a few weeks into the alleged pandemic, our Therapeutic Goods Administration, our TGA, our medicines regulator, explicitly came out and actually said to all health practitioners in Australia, from doctors to nurses to people like me, you must not give any advice on prevention or treatment for COVID unless there's specific evidence for their effectiveness against this particular virus. So basically, in the weeks beforehand, I was already telling people vitamin D and various other things, look after your immune system, and this is what the things you needed to do. But then basically the TGA silenced me. Actually, they tried to, but I didn't. So vitamin D and other immune system support will fix the cause of the problem and will prevent COVID, but also if you still came down with it, will help treat it better as well. So try and remember this saying, vitamin D is the key. Vitamin D is the key for keeping your immune system strong, for prevention of the virus, for treatment of the coronavirus, but also colds and flu as well. Other benefits of vitamin D, as I said, it's a massive immune system booster, improves your moods, energy, skin conditions, sleep. That's going to affect, improve the immune system. Vitamin D acts in the body as an anti-inflammatory hormone, so it reduces inflammation, lowers the risk of many other chronic health conditions. It affects about a third of our gene expression to improve your overall health.
Would you mind if I just took a screenshot of that last
Yes, I do. I'm particularly offended. Just this one.
Thank you. Yep, thank you. Another quick question.
You may.
While we're waiting.
Sure.
Can you overdose on vitamin D supplements?
Can I what, sorry?
Can you overdose?
It would be extremely rare and very difficult to do. Typically, the dosage of vitamin D that you see on vitamin D products in Australia, or supplements, is 1,000 IU. That's the limit that the TGA allows. You can buy 10,000, 50,000, 100,000 IU products in the US through various websites, but they're not regulated or approved by the TGA. But you can get bigger doses. But I've seen some studies on vitamin D toxicity, and the one in particular sticks out, and it suggests that there was no
vitamin D toxicity on taking less than 35,000 IU per day. Like regularly. You can do 100,000, 200,000 a day, but only probably for a few days or a couple of weeks at most. Like when you're really seriously ill and you need some help, and your vitamin D levels are on the floor. But I wouldn't be doing that sort of dose long term. The therapeutic dose of vitamin D starts at 4,000 IU per day. So taking 1,000 is going to do nothing, sorry. So unless you're just trying to maintain it, it's not going to improve an already low immune system or vitamin D.
And is there too much sun exposure?
Yeah, look, it's that's a whole can of worms. I'm writing some information on that at the moment and come across some things on that, but that'll take too long to answer. But look, yes, you can cause skin damage from, as we know, from too much sun exposure, but there's a lot of benefits from getting regular sun exposure as well. Slightly controversially, there's actually a lot of studies, and I found another one just a couple of days ago which reminded me to start writing or mentioning this one, but there are actually no good quality studies showing that excessive sun exposure causes melanoma. Despite what you're told in the media or by doctors, there's no good studies to show that. Yes, sun exposure in excess can cause some of the BCCs and SCCs, or the skin damage that can contribute to those, but not melanoma. Typically, you get melanoma in people who have very low vitamin D levels on parts of their body that never see the sun, like their back, soles of their feet, other places. So melanoma is not related to sun exposure. So very interesting.
Just the difference between taking supplements versus the sun's vitamin D, how the body absorbs it.
I will cover that a little bit later. I've got some slides on that. Thank you. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I was going to ask the whole thing.
Okay. Thank you.
Sorry, can I ask a quick question? A girlfriend of mine's taking vitamin D and K that mixed together. Do you have to be careful with K?
No, you don't have to be necessarily careful with it. So to answer your question, so if you're taking higher doses of vitamin D because perhaps your vitamin D levels are really low and you want to try and get it up, vitamin K2 is the one that you need. There's vitamin K1 and K2. K1 is used for clotting, and vitamin K2 is used for helping, because when you take vitamin D, it's going to increase the amount of calcium that your body absorbs from your food. So if you're taking higher doses of vitamin D, then your body's going to absorb more calcium, and your body's going to go, don't know where to put it all, and sometimes we'll deposit it in the soft tissues, like in the blood vessels, and that can calcify, and that's not what you want. Vitamin K2 helps the calcium go to the bones where it's supposed to go, so it sort of regulates that process. So probably anything like over 5 or 10,000 IU vitamin D, if you're taking those sorts of doses, you should be taking vitamin K2 with it to help with that, but lower doses of vitamin D is not usually important.
Sorry, what did you say, over how much? 10,000?
Oh, like over about 5 or 10,000, I'll probably be making sure you get vitamin K2. Although you can get it in foods, like it's in fermented foods and those sorts of things, so fermented vegetables, sauerkraut, the probiotic drinks, things like that. But it's actually the bacteria that actually makes the vitamin K2, it's not actually in the food as such. Okay, let's move along. I've got a whole bunch of studies. I'm not going to go through them, but just to basically say, here's a study, and I've got the bit of a summary just across the top. So vitamin D improves your innate immunity. Vitamin D regulates your immune system function. Vitamin D can be used for prevention and treatment of infections. Vitamin D supplementation for COVID, so there's a lot of evidence for that in reducing the risk of COVID infections and deaths, and some mortality there as well. Vitamin D reduces, another one on reducing mortality. So there's a lot of studies. There's a lot more. I could have done another 100, but I won't. So how do we know if your immune system is working well? You can test it, or just go on symptoms anyway. I mean, if you're going to if you're getting regular colds and flu, if you're getting more than 1 or 2 colds or flu every year, well, that's probably a problem. We need to do something about it. So there's some blood tests that you can get through your GP that can have a look at different levels or different markers for your immune system. So I'll go through these. Some of them the GP probably won't do, and I'll explain which ones. So the standard blood test, or the FBC, or the full blood count, sometimes called the full blood exam, or the complete blood exam. It looks at your red blood cell quality and quantity, but also, more importantly, for your immune system, your white blood cell quantity and quality, and the differentials. So there's a breakdown of usually 5 different types of your white blood cells, and they all do different functions and respond to different things. So having that whole picture can really help. Having a look at your platelet levels is relevant for your immune system, but also particularly to do with COVID. So whether you get the COVID infection or whether you have a reaction to the vaccine, one of the big problems is it actually causes a lot of problems with platelets, either causing the platelets to aggregate or start a clot, a clotting process, which then becomes a big problem, or the shots tend to cause damage to the platelets, so you end up with really low platelets, so you can go either way. So it's useful to have a look. The ELFT test stands for electrolytes and liver function test. It also reports on kidney function and protein levels as well. It's a really good one to get, particularly your globulins. So these are your immune system proteins, so we can check and see how that's going. Your thyroid, because as I said earlier, your thyroid controls your metabolic rate, including the function of your immune system. To get a better picture, we really need to see more than just the TSH hormone, which is actually just a pituitary hormone, is an indirect marker of thyroid health. So we really need to see the T3 and T4, which are the actual thyroid hormone levels. And serum zinc, which your GP is almost certainly not going to do, but you can get that done privately. Of course, vitamin D, possibly optionally if it's indicated. Vitamin B12 and folate, serum folate levels, because both of vitamin B12 and folate are needed to make your white blood cells, which obviously become your immune system. But that's optional. You can get these tests done yourself. You don't need to go and see a GP. You come and ask me nicely. I've got a bunch of forms up here. If you want to grab one later, that's fine. So it's a QML pathology form. It doesn't actually say QML; it's another brand, but it's basically QML for nutritionists and naturopaths. But it's the same lab that the GPs use. And so you can tick the relevant boxes on there. You can just go straight into a QML lab and pay for the test privately. Usually $10, $15, $20, $30 or something like that for each test. And some of them, they do bundle some of them together so you can get a bit of a discount. So you can get that. Perhaps more importantly, to getting those tests is actually getting them analysed properly, because it's something that GPs don't do. I can explain this, but it's going to take a while, so I won't. But basically, if you've had blood tests done before, you'll see on the right-hand side typically there's a range, a greater than or less than a number, or a range between two numbers. Now this is what they call the reference range. The reference range is not an optimal range. It's basically just a statistical average of people who get tests at that lab, and if you get results from different labs, the reference range will be different, guarantee it. So, considering only unhealthy people generally get blood tests, that reference range is basically just a statistical average of unhealthy people. So why is a doctor trying to analyse your results by comparing your result to that reference range? Because that's not a target you want to get to, not at all. So I use optimal ranges instead. So I interpret the pathology results in that way. I'm a nutritionist. I understand the nutritional requirements for each test. So I'm always looking at, okay, if this particular marker is low, well, this means you've got a deficiency of this and this and this. Again, something that GPs don't have a clue about. I'm also looking for organ dysfunctions. I'm looking at results in a holistic way. So copying and pulling results from multiple tests looking at particular factors. So that's what I do. If that's something that you want me to have a look at for you, if you've had blood tests done in the past, or if you want to get some more up-to-date ones done, I'd be happy to do that for you. Preventions and treatments, what some of the things you should do. Obviously, we want to focus on prevention, whether it's COVID or flu or anything else. We need to de-stress. Lots of techniques on this. I'm not going to go through all this. I'm aware of your time. Have good hygiene practices, boost your immune system, eat a good diet, and take some supplements and or herbal medicines that can help improve your immune system function and or have antiviral or antibacterial actions as well. As a nutritionist, obviously I would prefer people to get all their nutrition from their food, but if I'm looking at pathology results and there's multiple deficiencies, which is really quite common, I would say that you can't eat your way out of a lot of these deficiencies, and for the short term, supplementation can really help. I don't recommend long-term supplementation, really only just to get your levels up and get your organs and functions working properly, and then and improving your diet, and that should be maintaining your levels from then on. So, great quote from Hippocrates: "Let food be your medicine, and medicine be your food." So food can obviously provide vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, many other nutrients, proteins that you need for your immune system. Get rid of toxins and wastes, helps the body to heal and recover, improve your sleep, and many other things there to help make you feel better. Obviously some good foods, plenty of protein. I do analyse people's diets, and I do tend to find that a lot of people just don't eat enough protein for different reasons, but also it is also very heavily reliant on your digestive system function as well. So you can eat a huge piece of red meat or steak, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and you can still be deficient in iron and protein and other things because if your digestive system isn't working well. Get a variety of fresh organic vegetables and fruits, plenty of water. Good sources of vitamin C. We do tend to think of vitamin C as more in citrus. It's an okay source, but even other vegetables and other fruits, even green leafy type vegetables, very, very high, if not higher in vitamin C than citrus. Vitamin D is a little bit of a problem. There's not very many foods that contain any vitamin D. Or if they do, they're in the wrong form, or they're actually fortified or deliberately added to the food. So obviously best to get vitamin D from the sun, but if you can't in winter, then either vitamin D supplements, either in capsules or drop form, or cod liver oil that's very high in vitamin D as well. I've got mushrooms up there. There's been some rumours going around on social media the last couple of years. Oh, you just stick your mushrooms out in the sun and they'll make vitamin D sort of an absolutely minute amount that's not going to be anywhere near enough, and it's actually vitamin D2, which is very poorly bioavailable by the body anyway, so you're not really going to get any benefit from that. Eggs may contain vitamin D, but again only if the chickens are actually fortified or it's in their food. Otherwise it's not going to be in there, and a little bit in some wild caught fish, but not a lot again. Zinc is a big problem in a lot of people. It's probably the biggest deficiency or most common deficiency I see in my clients. Probably the biggest sources of of zinc would be oysters, if you can handle them. Yummy. I know a lot of people can't, but they're the highest sources of zinc. Otherwise, zinc is found in meat and fish and dairy products as well. People who are vegetarian, vegan, sorry, the plant-based foods are very, very low in zinc typically, so it's a big deficiency issue in vegetarians and vegans. Nuts and seeds, yes, they do contain some, and no, the picture on the bottom right is not telling you to eat chocolate, but cacao is very high in minerals like magnesium and zinc. beneficial. In the form of chocolate, being highly processed, lots of sugar is actually going to suppress or reduce your immune system function. Other treatment ideas, sort of as I said earlier, vitamin D, preferably from sunlight, cod liver oil, vitamin D, if you need to supplement. As I did say earlier, 4,000 IU is the start of the therapeutic dose, and depends on your other symptoms and conditions whether you should take more. Vitamin C, say like a 1,000, 2,000 milligrams vitamin C daily, just as a prevention. But if you're feeling unwell, you should be doing that 3, 4, 5, 6 times a day. That sort of dose to bowel tolerance. That's the only issue with vitamin C. You need to run off to the bathroom, but usually you don't get that until you have a lot more. Zinc, typically just once a day, must be taken with food. If you don't take it with food, you'll know about it and you'll never do it again. I'm warning you now. So just one a day, around say the 20 to 30 sort of milligram of zinc. Not in the zinc oxide or zinc bicarbonate forms that are useless. Unfortunately, many products have those particular forms of zinc just because it's cheap and they sell a lot. It makes it look like you're getting zinc, but you're better off throwing them in the bin. Probiotics. Probiotics shouldn't necessarily be taken long term. They're really more typically I would be prescribing probiotics for specific conditions or symptoms, and not needing to take a probiotic every day. Like some of them you see on the TV, you know which ones I'm talking about. Just hopeless, maybe 2 or 3 strains of bacteria compared to the thousands that you've got. Really not going to do a lot. Various minerals. Herbal medicines can be great in improving your immune system function as well, but I'm not going to talk about those because herbal medicines really need to be prescribed individually, and we really need to take into account medications that people are on, other conditions or issues that people may have before recommending them, otherwise it can cause problems. You can add a lot of different spices and flavourings to your foods, which have a lot of anti-inflammatory, immune-enhancing, antiviral type actions and antibacterial actions as well. Actually make your food taste better too. So where do we go from here? Just a couple of little specials. I'm offering a $20 off a 30-minute sort of COVID immune system consultation, which I've been doing a lot of lately. So people who don't necessarily want to go into the whole hour and a half thing for the conditions or symptoms, but just sort of focusing on their immune system for COVID prevention or perhaps post-COVID vaccine related issues. So more a symptomatic consultation rather than a root cause one. However, if you want to do the whole hog, well, there's a bit of a discount on that as well. We've got to actually put on there as well a discount just to do look at pathology results analysis and report, which is something I specialise in as well. My consultations are very personalised, are available online most days of the week, or Wednesdays and Saturdays here, face to face if you prefer. These offers are available for you, for attending, partner, family or friends. Just mention the offer that you're here or saw me here, and not one of those. Health fund member rebates may be available, just depends on your fund. And if you'd like to know a little bit more or follow me for more regular topics or of interest or COVID things or conditions and symptoms, treatments and research, just have a look at my Crosswater Nutritionist and Facebook, Nutritionist and Naturopath Facebook page, or my website is there. So thank you so much, and I'll open up